welcome to Israel. The term in Hebrew that means perfect peace is Shalom Shalom, and that's what we wish for all of our precious viewers of Israel Vision around the world each week. So welcome to our program today.
But Shalom Shalom is also the name of an organization set up in Jerusalem by our dear friend Ron Cantrell.
Actually, it's called Shalom Shalom, and thanks for coming, Ron. We really enjoy having you on the program. And actually, you're back by popular demand because we got quite a large number of requests for more information about your writing and your organization.
That's a nice compliment. Thanks for the invite.
Well, you're a man of many talents, and one of them being that you're a public speaker, you're a graphic artist, you're a very wonderful grandfather and father, and we enjoy you as a friend. Now, tell us what you're up to these days.
Well, with the things that are going on in the world, every time you think you can fix a cup of tea and relax, something new happens. So
that's true.
Public speaking is a big demand right now, particularly with the situation with the Mahdi, which is the latest book that I wrote. It was
It
was written about 2 years ago. That's when I first heard of this term, and found it quite by accident. I downloaded a book by one of the Ayatollahs from Iran that just happened to be translated into English by the Director of Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Virginia for use in the United States at the madrasas or the Islamic schools of teaching in the larger cities' Islamic communities. Well, 490 pages of information about the Mahdi from Ayatollah Amini is condensed in this book for Christians, so we can know what this whole situation is all about. Now, 2 years ago, hardly anybody had heard of this.
No.
And no Christians were writing on it that I know of. Now, almost weekly, something new crops up about this Islamic character.
What does Mahdi mean?
Mahdi is the term used for an Islamic messianic figure or a Messiah that will come. A lot of people, the minute they hear that, go, well, is that the Antichrist? No, it is not. Even Islam has an Antichrist. They call him Al-Dajjal. But the Mahdi is another picture entirely. Supposedly disappeared as a 9-year-old in the 10th century with the promise that came down through tradition that when it was time for Islam to wage a war that would put Islam as the last standing religion on the face of the earth, the Mahdi would come out of hiding, announce himself, and then the Islamic world would know that...
Have they put a name to this person, to this?
No, not yet. Not
office?
yet.
They haven't.
No.
Now you've said...
The Mahdi is as far as I understand, the Mahdi is the title and the office.
All right. So he is to appear.
So he is to appear.
Now you mentioned recently in one of your emails that one of the darkest characters in the history of the world will soon appear. Who are you referring to?
Well, I was referring to Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, and I was saying that what we see going on in Iran at this time is a tyrant on the level of Hitler and Mussolini.
Wow!
And we just have to keep our eyes on him. He just spent $17 million on a mosque in Tehran dedicated to the Mahdi.
Wow!
In the expectation of his coming out of hiding. Also, I understand that he connected Tehran with a small village by a large boulevard at a great expense, also dedicated to the Mahdi. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, if you remember, was one of the leaders of the American embassy
yes, we heard that.
Hostage takeover.
The hostage takeover.
But it was never proven, was it?
When they spent 444 days trying to get out of this embassy.
And he was one of those ones that orchestrated.
I understand he was among those who were orchestrating that. But now his calling for Israel to be wiped off of the face of the earth and wanting nuclear power and his continual comments about this coming Islamic figure As a matter of fact, the United Nations at the 60th anniversary last year, my wife Carol and I were watching on television, and the speakers, he happened to be one of the last speakers, and when he spoke, my hair stood on end because he ended his whole speech in a prayer that Allah would quickly send the perfect man who would bring peace and justice to the earth. Now, if you don't know anything about the Mahdi, that sounds like a very good prayer. Who wouldn't want a perfect man that would come and bring peace and justice to the earth? But if you know the Mahdi, this is a euphemism for this Islamic messianic figure. And he was caught on tape in a hallway talking to one of his colleagues later, and the conversation was, did you know that when you spoke, there was a halo around you? And Mahmoud said to him, I could tell that something special was happening because it was as if Allah was holding every one of the world's leaders without even their eyes being able to blink so that I could deliver my message. So we're seeing an amazing thing going on in Iran. And I'm so glad, actually, it's a wonderful thing because we're watching things that really point us toward the end of days.
Yes.
And we are here and we get to participate in it.
Yes.
So it isn't something really to be frightened about. It's something to be excited about, that we are here now at this time period and we see these things unfolding in a most amazing
Rapidly, don't you think things are being exposed? I would say that evil is being exposed for all the earth to see. Now, you have mentioned that the Chronicles of Narnia paint a picture of how people will be duped with the coming
Actually,
of
it
the Mahdi.
wasn't the Chronicles.
No.
It was another C.S. Lewis book series.
Which is?
And that's the Space Trilogy. And the last book, which is called That Hideous Strength, he paints a picture of an organization called the NICE that began to take over big chunks of the government system within Britain. Now, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote the book prior to the formation of the United Nations. So with that in mind, I have to say that this man, this man really loved God in a very special way. And a lot of the writings that he has done are very sensitive to the presence of the Lord.
Also to the war between darkness and light.
Yes, definitely, the war between darkness and light. And with the way things are going now, I just see him as a kind of a soft prophet in his writings. So the world is being duped. I mean, if we just sat down and we were able to write down the things that are happening today on a piece of paper and take it back 35 years and tell people, here's what's going to happen in 2006, they would just go,
wow.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. All right, put it in context. The Mahdi is going to come onto the scene. Now, he's coming through the Shiite religion, is that correct? Like there's two divisions in Islam, Sunni and Shiite.
Sunni and Shiite split right after the death of Muhammad, and the friendship camp, which is the Sunnis, and the family or the kinship camp, which was the Shiites, they both kind of traveled down the timeline. And about the 10th century, there was another split within the Shiite camp. That split involved the group called the Twelvers, and there were 12 imams that descended from Jaber, and that 12th imam was the one who disappeared and would come back later. The other was the Ismaili group, which actually gave birth to the assassins, the hashish smoking and eating group that were to assassinate the people that they felt stood in their way.
So that word assassin came from those...
From hashashin, which is the Arabic word for hashish.
Okay.
So
assassin comes from hashish.
Yes, it does.
Wow.
The story is rather long and involved, but very interesting, and it's in a book that I wrote called Unholy War for an Islamic Empire.
Okay, well we want our reading or our viewing audience to be sure to get these books of Ron Cantrell's, The Unholy War for an Islamic Empire and The Mahdi.
Hijacked Messiah.
Hijacked Messiah. These books are available through Ron's website. But if you want to if it's easier for you, just contact us at www.israelvision.com, and we will pass on your request for his books to Ron. And we would really highly endorse these for your reading. Ron, you've become a kind of a walking encyclopedia. Why did you write this unholy war for an Islamic empire?
I was speaking in the United States in 2001 in the spring. And, I don't very often say the Lord told me something.
No.
That's dangerous.
Very.
But I was on speaking tour and I had all of my notes prepared, all of the sermons, and the Lord just said, put those away. And I want you to speak on Islam. And I said, I don't know. I don't know that much. I've got these venues stretching out in front of me, and now I have to change horses in the middle of the stream. And he said, well, just go to the bookstore and the library and get what you need and start. And so I did. And it was the September of that year in the fall that 9/11 took place.
Yes.
And I, with the rest of the world, was stunned beyond belief. I was here in Jerusalem in my office, and my wife called me on the phone and said, you have to get to a television right now. A plane just flew into the Trade Towers. And I was very busy, had deadlines, and I'm going, don't think I can do that right now. Because I'm thinking Cessna, accident, off course. And she's going, you have to. This was like a jumbo jet. So by the time I got to the television, the second one had hit. And then I drove home in a daze, really, just in a daze, on Hebron Road, which borders, between Arab Jerusalem and Jewish Jerusalem, just astounded. And by the time I got home, my front room was filled with my friends' kids or my kids' friends, sorry, and we watched those two towers come down. So that's the reason for that book. And the Mahdi, I explained, the saga just goes on. And I want to quickly say about the Mahdi that when you say to an Islamic person that you believe in Jesus, and they say to you, yes, so do I, you have to know that they are probably not talking about the same Jesus that you are. Because when the Mahdi comes out of hiding and announces himself, they believe that Jesus will also appear. And that the Mahdi will take Jesus to Mecca. He will teach him how to pray. They will circumambulate the Kaaba together. And then this Jesus will replace the gospel with the Quran. And then people all over the world will be mandated to become converts to Islam. So you need to know those things.
That is so interesting, and I'm sure most of our viewers know nothing of what you've just told us.
Yeah, it's very important.
Very.
Ron, you've also written a fascinating book called The Feasts of the Lord, and this book is a different genre. What is the behind this book?
It's actually for Christians so that they can understand that the book of Leviticus chapter 23 is for all of us. Even though the Jewish people were the ones who kept these feasts, they are called the Feasts of the Lord. And the subtitle there says Rehearsals for End-Time Events. And actually, this really is a calendar of where we are prophetically on God's timeline.
Where are we?
Some of those festivals have been fulfilled, and some we're waiting for. We're waiting now for the fall festivals. And it goes right along with this idea of the Mahdi coming, because the fall festival being Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. I grew up in Kansas in wheat country. And we used to ride the wheat combines until 1 and 2 in the morning because the moon in that month, the full moon, is bright enough to light up just like daylight. And I think there's a spiritual application. I think God is giving us light in the end of time so that we can keep on the harvest right up until the last minute. And this harvest has to do with those who would come up, just like the Philistines did, and rob Israel of her crops. We're watching a tidal wave of Islam circle the globe that threatens to take our harvest.
Yes, what an analogy. We're out of time, unfortunately, but I would like to close with the words of Jesus that say, So when you see these things, know that it is at the doors. In other words, the appearance of the Messiah. And look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. That's Luke 21:28. Thank you, Ron, for being our guest today.
Thank you.
And you can order these books online. There's a telephone number there. Pick up the phone and call. You need to be aware of what Ron has to teach all of us, and not only make yourself aware, but share the news.
Shalom from Jerusalem. Shalom and welcome to Fact or Fantasy this week. This is Jay Rawlings reporting to you, and in this series we're trying to understand Hamas, the newly elected organization that's now the government of the Palestinian people. As I promised last week, today we're going to look at the characteristics of Hamas leadership who have succeeded in charming some Western audience, including especially those in Russia, following their victory in the Palestinian elections in January of 2006. Political Bureau Chairman Khalid Mashal announced that the previous agreements with Israel are a reality impossible to ignore. On the other hand, Hamas is stating categorically that they will never recognize Israel or her right to exist, or previous commitments made to them by the PA under Fatah. So what's really going on here? I believe that you're getting the usual doublespeak from this organization. Israel has had to continually be subjected to this confusion under the last governments of the PA, under Chairman Mahmoud Abbas and his predecessor Yasser Arafat. So let's look at Hamas movement right now. The Hamas movement was formed in Gaza Strip in the 1987, where the movement's seat of power has been situated ever since. However, following the last 20 years, the IDF has targeted and taken out the leadership of the terrorists in Gaza and the deportation of others. The Hamas leadership then split into two centers. The first is the external leadership based in Damascus after its expulsion from Jordan in 1999, and the second leadership is a faction in the internal leadership based in the PA-administered territories, with most of its power concentrated in the Gaza Strip area, the seat of the majority of the senior Hamas figures where they live. Now let's look at the external leadership for a moment. The external leadership is influenced and assisted by Syria and Iran, and is still the movement's highest authority, even though the influence of the internal leadership has risen in the wake of the elections. Traditionally, the external leadership espoused stricter and more radical positions than the internal leadership, owing to its separation from the constraints of the Palestinian people and its proximity to its mentors in Iran and Syria. Now, the external leadership is made up of a combination of Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood members who have studied abroad, mainly in countries in the Persian Gulf area, and who have joined Hamas after its establishment, and internal members deported from the Palestinian-administered territories as terrorists. And after the targeted assassination of Hamas spiritual leader Sheikh Ahmed Yassin in 2004, it was then that the focus of the leadership shifted from inside to outside. Now, presently, the movement's leaders are consisting of chairman of its political bureau, Khalid Mashal, and he's based in Damascus. And he's occupied this position since 1998. And his deputy is also based in Damascus, is Musa Mohammed Abu Marzouk, for whom the United States issued an arrest warrant for assisting and financing terrorism. The Hamas Political Bureau Chairman, Khalid Mashal, regularly confers with Hezbollah leader Nassan Nasrallah. Both of these players continue to exert their powerful influence from Syria and Lebanon on Hamas's conduct in the PA-administered territories right next to Israel. Finally, the lead figures of Hamas's internal leadership operate in the Gaza Strip. And it's important to remember that from the Gaza Strip, thousands of Qassam rockets have been lobbed into Israel. And this is happening on a daily basis. And ever since the elections, some of Hamas's leaderships are also based in the West Bank Israeli prisons, but the extent of their seniority and influence is much reduced. Well, that's all for this week for Fact or Fantasy. Now, next week, I'm going to talk about Hamas's connections to the international scene. See you then.
Welcome to the Still Small Voice. I'm going to touch upon something called condemnation for just the next minute or so. Condemnation is like a dark cellar with no way out. You know, our nation of Israel was literally born out of the Holocaust. It was a time in history when to be a Jew meant you were condemned to death. Your only crime was being born. And that was over 60 years ago. But here we are in the 21st century, and we find that this horrible disease called condemnation is as live and strong as ever. And living in Israel, we feel and sense the condemnation of our neighbors. And as my son said, Mom, the only crime is being a Jew. And that's really a bit of insanity, to hate a person because they were born something. They had no say over who they would be when they were born. Now, I receive letters back from people that hear the program, and some of them are very interesting. And here's a girl that writes, and she says, there are so many lies in my head. There's a lie about being a horrible person, that God will not want me now or even when I get to heaven. Now, you see, that's condemnation. She has swallowed what someone has taught her about herself. But she says, I am listening to you when you say to take it easy and to go slowly and to listen. And you know, she says, I've learned about my false belief system. I believed something that was false. And she said, the answer came to me in a story that Jesus told about a woman that had been condemned to death. And he reached down to her and said to her, who condemns you now? And she looked around and she said, no one. And he said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. You see, our God is not a condemner. And he wants us to realize that he will bring us out of whatever the world puts upon us, the community puts upon us, the family puts upon us, or we put upon ourselves. This young girl wrote and said, I am getting rid of these lies because I want to be pure in heart, and I long to see God and to have him talk directly to me and comfort me, like when I was a little child and when I was very ill. And I'm sure that many are watching today that have the same desire, that would love to hear him speak to you. Just make yourself available. He reads the thoughts and the intents of the heart. He knows you better than you know yourself. Take a moment and just listen. If you'd like to be in touch with me, just log on to my beautiful website, stillsmallvoice.tv. Remember, there is now therefore no condemnation, none. Who are your accusers? There are none. Shalom from Jerusalem.